After having finished their lunch, the group of friends headed for the National Palace Museum. As there were just too many exhibitions to see, it took them the whole afternoon to see only a small part of it. Only after everyone's stomachs were starting to grumble extremely loudly, despite having had the huge portions of noodles for lunch, did Jeffrey reluctantly agree to leave the museum to grab some dinner. What a shame, I could stay here all day, sighed Jeffrey. Don't worry, you guys are here for a fortnight, so you have plenty of time to view the rest of the exhibitions later on, said Blythe. After their visit to the National Palace Museum, the group of friends decided to head to the famous Shilin night market to taste some authentic Taiwanese street food. Oh my god, I think I'm getting fat with all these delicious Taiwanese food, exclaimed Claire. She glanced around the stalls which offered all kinds of tasty food that were tempting her with their aromatic smells. Then you should probably go smell some stinky tofu. That way you'll probably lose all your appetite, replied Blythe jokingly. Actually, it's not a bad idea, answered Jeffrey. I've heard a lot about that legendary dish, but never got the chance to try it. I'd like to see just how stinky it can be. Right after Jeffrey had finished talking, the group of friends passed a food store selling Shenkeng stinky tofu. Immediately, the pungent smell hit their noses as if challenging them to taste the famous dish. Whoa, that's really unexpected, exclaimed Jeffrey, quite taken aback by the powerful aroma. Challenge accepted. Come on guys, there's nothing to lose. Let's head in the store and order some stinky tofus. The group of friends reluctantly followed Jeffrey into the store, with Tiffany holding her nose all the way. Nevertheless, after they've taken a bite of the succulent tofu whilst holding their noses, they were immediately enchanted by its unique taste. It's not bad as I thought, actually, said Eliza, taking another bite. Another bowl of stinky tofu, please, ordered Tiffany after she devoured her portion. After having eaten way too much Taiwanese street food for one night, the group of friends decided to split up into groups of two to take a stroll around the night market, then gather at the same place at an appointed time. That's not fair. Why am I not with my Jeffy? Complained Tiffany to Claire as they walked down a street selling jewelry. Because neither of you knows how to speak Mandarin, replied Claire. Just when Tiffany was about to retort, something caught her eye. In a dimly lit corner of the street was a woman dressed in a red Chinese traditional dress called qipao, standing behind a wooden table, on top of which was a bottle of ink, a piece of paper, and a Chinese calligraphy pen. The woman was smiling at Tiffany and waving at her. Hello, miss, said the woman in qipao in English. Do you want to know your fortune? I can tell you your fortune. A fortune teller, said Tiffany as she slowly walked towards the stand as if hypnotized by magic. Ignore her, Tiffany, she's probably a fraud, said Claire as she tried to pull her friend away. Nevertheless, Tiffany struggled free from Claire's grasp and continued walking towards the stand. On approaching the stand, Claire suddenly felt a bone-chilling breeze. What's going on? It's 32 degrees and I'm feeling cold, she thought. How much do you charge? I want to know how my relationship with my Jeffy will progress, said Tiffany as she took out her purse. Usually, we charge 500 Taiwanese dollars for future telling, but as I can tell you, you have a very special fortune, said the fortune teller, still smiling. So, I will not charge you. Claire, after seeing that her friend was not going to get ripped off, became slightly more relaxed and walked towards the fortune teller. Let me see your right palm, said the fortune teller to Tiffany, who held out her hand. The fortune teller stared unblinkingly at Tiffany's palm, and then at her face. Only after what seemed like ages did she finally speak. I see a cloud, a dark cloud over your face, muttered the fortune teller in Mandarin. Then she picked up the calligraphy pen, dipped its tip in some ink, and began writing. After she had finished, Claire noticed that the character standing for the word shadow has been written on the paper. What do you mean? Inquired Claire, who was starting to chatter with cold despite her not perceiving any sort of fan or air conditioning nearby. I see a good thing, but accompanied by a bad omen. A disaster is waiting for you in the near future, said the fortune teller, ignoring Claire and looking intently at Tiffany. I cannot say any more. All I can tell you is beware of the shadow. after Claire and Tiffany left the fortune-telling stand, they immediately felt the hot breeze of the summer evening on their faces whilst pondering over the puzzling words of the fortune-teller. A few minutes before 9 o'clock, Claire and Tiffany arrived at the appointed place where they promised to gather up after they had finished shopping, only to find that Blythe and Geoffrey were already there. "I need to pee. Tell the others that I'll be right back," whispered Claire to Tiffany as she headed to one of the public toilets on the side. Tiffany walked towards Geoffrey and Blythe, only to perceive the latter standing in front of an antique store, staring intently at something. "What's she looking at?" Tiffany asked Geoffrey as she alluded to Blythe. "Blythe seemed to have found that painting really interesting," replied Geoffrey, shrugging. "Well, I personally don't see anything interesting about it, except that the woman in the painting looks pretty hot to me. "Oh, is she hotter than me?" demanded Tiffany as she strolled towards Blythe, who was still scrutinizing the piece of ancient artwork painted on a scroll. Apparently, it was a portrait of a Japanese woman holding a fan, with a melancholy expression on her face. The colors of the painting have quite faded, giving it an even sadder sensation. Blythe, after having perceived Tiffany approaching her, took her eyes away from the old painting and began to walk away. "Let's go," Blythe said to Tiffany, then whispered in her ear, "Don't look at the painting. Somehow it seems a bit weird to me." Nevertheless, it was all too late. The moment Tiffany's eyes caught the painting, she felt that she could not take her eyes off it. Anonymous and malevolent, an omnipotent desire overcame Tiffany to gain possession of that painting, which was like a lonely child eager for company, luring her into its merciless grasp. After the storekeeper, an old man in his 60s with a grey beard, noticed Tiffany's longing stare at the portrait, he kindly said, "Miss, do you like this? I give you discount. Before 5,000 Taiwan dollars, now only 3,000, no? Do you want?" Suddenly, a shadow fell upon Tiffany, and a powerful voice from deep within commanded her to gain possession of the portrait right away. Hypnotized, Tiffany blurted out, "Yes, I do." At that very instant, Claire, Eliza, and Sean arrived. Sean was holding a huge suitcase containing all the things that Tiffany has bought. In fact, Tiffany has bought too many things that she had to buy a suitcase to store everything in. "Wow, that's all this, Tiffany?" inquired Eliza. Tiffany did not reply as she seemed to be lost in her own thoughts. She just stared blankly in front of her whilst holding the portrait scroll tightly in her right hand, as if in fear that it would be taken away from her. "It's late already and it seems like everyone is tired," said Blythe as she noticed Tiffany's unusual silence. "Let's call it a day, head back home, take a hot shower, then hit the hay. We're leaving Taipei and going to Kaohsiung City tomorrow, so we'll need plenty of energy." "What a fun day, innit?" said Eliza as she and Tiffany entered their bedroom. Tiffany was unusually quiet throughout their journey on the Taipei metro from Shilin night market back to Blythe's grandmother's apartment. "Right, Tiffany, I'm going to take a shower before going to sleep. It has been a long day today and there's nothing better to wash away your fatigues than a hot shower. Do you want to go first? Or shall I go first?" questioned Eliza. Nevertheless, Tiffany just sat in front of the mirror, staring at her own reflection as if lost in her own thoughts. Then, seeing that Tiffany wasn't paying attention, Eliza sighed, grabbed a towel, her pajamas, and toiletries and headed to the bathroom. On returning to their room, Eliza noticed that Tiffany had hung up the portrait and was staring intently at the figure inside. Without warning, Eliza seemed to have perceived the figure's mouth curved up slowly into a smile. She quickly rubbed her eyes and reopened them, only to discover that the smile was gone. "I must be too tired such that I'm starting to have illusions," thought Eliza to herself as she took out the bedclothes, blankets, and pillows from the large wardrobe at the end of the room and laid them down on the tatami in Japanese style. "Tiffany? Tiffany!" Only did Eliza yell her name extremely loudly did Tiffany snap back into reality and took her eyes away from the portrait. "What?" replied Tiffany as if woken up from a daze. "Can you turn off the lights? We need to sleep early tonight as we rise early next morning to take the high-speed train to Kaohsiung. Plus, I'm exhausted," said Eliza. Like a zombie, Tiffany wandered slowly towards the door and turned off the light switch. Then she lay down on her bed and closed her eyes. That night, Tiffany tossed and turned in a restless sleep as she was having a strange dream.